What if I told you the scariest thing about being a pirate wasn't the cannon fire, or the hangings, or the smell of sweaty men living on salted fish and rum for months, but the fact that nobody on that ship had a reliable sex life? That's right. Forget Jack Sparrow's eyeliner and swagger. The real nightmare was figuring out what to do with your libido when you're trapped on a floating sausage party for half a year. Sailors lived in a pressure cooker of boredom, violence, and yes, horniness. And unlike the fantasy novels, there weren't tavern wenches waiting under every deck plank. So how did these outlaw sea wolves handle the awkward, deeply human problem of, I kinda need to get laid? By the end of this video, you might actually feel like your modern dating problems, Tinder ghosting, awkward texts, disappointing one-night stands, aren't so bad after all. And hey, if you enjoy learning about the weirdest, darkest corners of human history, hit that subscribe button, because if I'm going to need therapy after reading Pirate Diaries, you might as well join me on the couch. Let's get right into it. Number 1. The long, dry voyage. Picture it. You're stuck on a wooden ship with 80 dudes, 3 pigs, and a barrel of biscuits crawling with maggots. The next port with women willing or unwilling to entertain sailors is months away. So what do? Well, the truth is, mostly nothing. Long voyages were notorious for being bone dry in every sense of the word. Many pirates simply had to grit their teeth and wait. But waiting didn't mean they weren't thinking about it. Sailors sang filthy songs, carved erotic graffiti into wood, and swapped dirty jokes as a coping mechanism. The ship itself became a floating locker room of testosterone and innuendo. And the longer the voyage, the more obsessive it got. Picture your office's most unhinged group chat, except you can't mute it because you're trapped in the chat room itself, bobbing up and down on the ocean. The irony? Pirates loved freedom, but when it came to their own bodies, they were basically prisoners of circumstance. It was the world's least sexy prison sentence, complete with bad food and scurvy. Number 2. Shipmates as soulmates. Here's where things get spicy. Pirates weren't always as no-homo as Hollywood likes to pretend. In fact, historians have found records of matelotage, a practice where 2 male pirates basically became life partners. This wasn't just about splitting treasure. It could mean sharing a bed, sharing rations, and yes, sometimes sharing affection. Think of it as pirate marriage, but with more pistols and fewer in-laws. And while not every matelotage was sexual, some absolutely were. Ships were pressure cookers of intimacy. You ate together, slept together, fought together. It's not shocking that sometimes the lines blurred. When you're trapped at sea, the guy next to you with a decent singing voice and all his teeth suddenly looks like a solid catch. Of course, outsiders later twisted this into jokes about pirates being unnatural. But really, it was just human beings adapting to a weird, claustrophobic environment. You can only play dice so many times before you start noticing how broad your bunkmate's shoulders are. Number 3. The port city explosion. Now don't get me wrong, when pirates did finally reach land, they made up for lost time with terrifying enthusiasm. The moment a crew rolled into a port city like Nassau or Port Royal, brothels and taverns went into overtime. Local women, sex workers, and sometimes even desperate townsfolk got swept into what could only be described as a week-long carnival of questionable hygiene. Pirates blew through gold faster than frat boys at a Vegas strip club. Some sailors spent their entire share of treasure on alcohol and prostitutes in a single night, then staggered back to the ship penniless. Ports even had entire economies built around this. Liquor sellers, brothel owners, and corrupt officials all counted on pirates' explosive lust and stupidity. The scary part? Disease. Syphilis and gonorrhea spread through pirate crews faster than gossip at your family reunion. Some men came back from shore leave with more than a hangover. They came back doomed, but in their eyes, it was worth it. Months of deprivation followed by one chaotic blowout. That was the cycle. Number 4, desperate substitutions. So what do you do when the ship hasn't seen land in months and the only companionship around is livestock? Yep, the rumors are true. Some sailors turn to goats, pigs, or whatever unfortunate animal happened to be on board. Ship journals and early naval court cases quietly mention unnatural acts with animals, which were punishable by death if discovered. Imagine being hanged not for piracy, but because someone caught you making eyes at the goat. It wasn't common, thank God, but it happened enough that captains wrote strict rules about it. The line between, "We need these animals for food," and "Jerry, get away from the sheep," was apparently thinner than we'd like to admit. The dark comedy here is that pirates were fighting over gold and glory while occasionally dealing with the very unglamorous reality of barnyard temptations. Disney definitely skipped that subplot in Pirates of the Caribbean. Number 5, the cross-dressing escape. Here's a twist you won't see coming. Not every man on board was a man. Some women disguised themselves as male pirates to escape poverty, abuse, or just sheer boredom with land life. Famous cases like Anne Bonny and Mary Read prove it wasn't just rumor. And yes, sometimes these secret women ended up as sexual partners for pirates. The reveal could be dramatic. One sailor discovering his bunkmate wasn't exactly who he thought. Cue the soap opera music. For some crews, it was a scandal. For others, it was just another weird wrinkle in shipboard life. The irony is that cross-dressing gave women the freedom to join the most hyper-masculine, testosterone-soaked environment imaginable. And once the truth came out, well, let's just say some pirates suddenly reconsidered their preferences. It's like the 1700s version of catfishing, but with more cannons and fewer DMs. Number 6, the don't ask, don't tell reality. Pirates were criminals, but they weren't stupid. They knew better than to openly flaunt taboo behaviors because mutiny was always a risk. If the crew hated you, you were done. So whatever happened between two shipmates often stayed between two shipmates. This unspoken rule, call it the proto don't ask, don't tell, kept the ship functioning. Everyone knew there was pent-up energy on board. Everyone knew some men were closer than just brothers in arms, but as long as it didn't wreck discipline, captains often turned a blind eye. Think of it as the ultimate group project, survival tactic. You don't complain about your lab partner eating glue if he's also the only guy who knows how to keep the cannon from exploding. In pirate logic, you do you, just don't sink the ship. It was pragmatic, it was hypocritical, and it was very, very human. Pirates could be ruthless killers at sea, but when it came to each other's sex lives, the vibe was basically, I'm not touching this one, literally or figuratively. Number 7, the curse of disease. Let's talk about STDs, because, oh boy, pirates had plenty. Sailors were basically the Uber drivers of syphilis, ferrying it from one continent to another. One wild night in Port Royal could leave a man with a lifelong souvenir that burned worse than cannon fire. Gonorrhea was so common, the crew sometimes had to reshuffle sleeping arrangements because half the men couldn't stop groaning from pain. And without antibiotics, the cures were medieval nightmare fuel, mercury ointments, toxic brews, or just letting the disease slowly rot your body. Imagine your captain screaming, "Hoist the mainsail!" while you're doubled over clutching your pirate booty for all the wrong reasons. Disease wasn't just embarrassing, it was disabling. A crew riddled with infection was a weaker crew, which made them easier prey. The cruel irony. Pirates were fearless in battle, but terrified of what a single night ashore might do to their nether regions. Turns out, the scariest enemy wasn't the Royal Navy, it was syphilis. Number 8. Rum and repression. Sometimes the solution wasn't sex, it was booze. Pirates loved rum so much that it became their primary coping mechanism. Drunkenness dulled the loneliness, numbed the frustration, and turned nights into blurry hazes of bad singing and worse decisions. But rum wasn't just fun, it was functional. A tipsy crew was less likely to mutiny over their captain's sex life or their bunkmates' suspicious friendship. Alcohol gave pirates an excuse to laugh off tension, both sexual and otherwise. The downside? Addiction. Pirates drank until they were staggering messes, and sometimes it ended in fights, stabbings, or falling overboard. But for many, it was easier than facing the long months of enforced celibacy. Basically, rum was therapy, tinder, and antidepressants all rolled into one nasty, watered-down drink. Number 9. The exotic lover fantasy. Sailors spent so long at sea that they built entire mythologies about the exotic lovers waiting in foreign lands. From Caribbean islands to Southeast Asia, local women became the subject of sailor songs, stories, and fantasies. When they finally docked, pirates pursued these encounters like treasure hunts. Some even married women abroad, creating tangled webs of mixed families in port cities. But let's be honest, most of these romances were transactional, powered by coin, rum, or brute force. The fantasy, however, kept men going during the long, dry spells. Exotic lovers became the pin-up posters of the 18th century, fueling the imagination of pirates who had nothing else to dream about besides salted pork and the smell of sweaty hammocks. The irony? The fantasy was often better than the reality. The dream of passion in far-off lands usually ended with a hangover, an empty purse, and a rash that didn't go away. Number 10. The Bro Code of the Sea. Here's something you won't see in polished history books. Pirates had their own unofficial Bro Code for dealing with pent-up lust. The rule was simple: don't make it weird. Whether it was two men quietly sharing a hammock, a crewmate sneaking off in port, or someone nursing an embarrassing rash, you didn't gossip. This was survival. If a fight broke out over someone's private life, the whole ship could collapse into chaos. So the unspoken agreement was, keep your mouth shut, pass the rum, and pretend you didn't notice who was cuddling whom under that ragged blanket. It was crude, it was fragile, but it worked. Pirates were anarchists, but even anarchy needs boundaries. And in this case, the boundary was, don't ask questions you don't want the disgusting answers to. Over time, sailors exaggerated their sex lives into wild legends. A single encounter in Havana became a dozen women in one night. A quick visit to a brothel turned into tales of seducing princesses. Pirates lived on reputation, and nothing boosted that like a filthy story. The truth? Most pirates were broke, diseased, or too exhausted to actually live up to their own hype, but the lies gave them status. Around the fire, swapping outrageous sex tales was as valuable as sharing stolen treasure. It was their version of social media clout. Pirate Instagram, except instead of thirst traps, it was bragging about the countless lovers they absolutely, definitely had. The irony is that behind the swagger, most of these men were just lonely, desperate, and making things up so they didn't seem pathetic, which, honestly, sounds a lot like modern dating apps. Number 11. The Lonely Horizon. At the end of the day, pirate life wasn't all gold coins and sea shanties. It was lonely. Many pirates died young, without families, without partners, and without anyone to mourn them but their crew. The lack of sex wasn't just about physical frustration. It was about the emptiness of living in a world where intimacy was rare and fleeting. That's the dark truth. Pirates sacrificed stability for freedom, and freedom came with a high price. No lasting relationships, no comfortable homes, no stable love. Just the endless ocean, a dangerous crew, and the occasional blurry night in a brothel. If history teaches us anything, it's that human desire doesn't just vanish. It adapts, mutates, and sometimes goes down some very weird paths involving goats, rum, and badly timed port visits. Pirates remind us that even the most fearsome, violent men were still human beings, struggling with the same awkward, messy needs as everyone else. And maybe the real lesson is this. Our world today, with dating apps, awkward flirting, and questionable one-night stands isn't actually that different from a pirate ship, just less scurvy, hopefully. That's all for today. I'll be making similar videos in the future. Subscribe to see them.